Hello again, my dear viewers. It's the 28th of April, and in the second piece today, I want to talk to you about that, one might say, planetary fracture, which at the end of the second month of events in Ukraine is already evident. And this fracture is called breaking the world into pieces. That is, that global world which lived as a whole, yes, having its contradictions, nevertheless, it lived as a whole as a single economic mechanism. That's all falling apart today. Moreover, the further we go, the more obvious it becomes that it seems to be disintegrating for a very, very long period of time at least. In other words, roughly the same way it happened during the Cold War, and in this case it may not even split into two parts, but into a number of parts. Well, unequivocally, for example, the Russian cluster and the Atlantic cluster, for instance, will now live an autonomous life. And this was particularly well illustrated by recent events related to the payment for Russian gas. For example, European countries had to start paying in April under the new scheme, essentially in rubles. Many countries have already refused to do it. Some have agreed but tried to do it in a tricky way, that is, resorted to various tricks to circumvent the scheme, which for the West, in fact, is humiliating. And the question, as we realize, is not about money at all. It's not the money that's important to Russia now. What's important is to push through, to bend Europe to its terms and show the world that it is not Russia that is weak and ill-prepared for the new conditions, and that it is Europe that is totally unprepared for what awaits it in the coming autumn and winter. And it is going to be a very, very difficult winter for them. And I want to tell the people of the European Union about this right away. The thing is that with the severing of these ties, and it looks like it's going to progress, you're not only going to have a heating problem, you are generally going to have a problem with changing your whole way of life. Not only will you be living in coal homes, in fact, you've already had this green agenda completely phased out as of today. Pay attention, nobody talks about green energy anymore. On the contrary, they're already talking about the need to return to the mines to produce coal and in general to reanimate coal-fired power plants. That is because the economy of the European Union cannot go on like this. And this is only the very beginning, and then another fracture will begin, a psychological one. That's because Europeans are used to living in comfort, and you will not be able to live in comfort anymore. The reason is that their countries decided to go into tough confrontation with the Russian Federation, excluding the country from various international organizations, and Russia itself is withdrawing from some organizations. Today, the question has already been raised that Russia must be gradually expelled from the UN. This is how the Europeans and Americans are trying to form a so-called huge anti-Russian coalition. However, they are very, very bad at it. And a clear example of this is the last event at the Ramstein base, where only, I think, 42 states were assembled, if I'm not mistaken. While traditionally the European partners of the United States plus the partners in the Asian region, they could not assemble any fundamentally new partners there, and in this way they have once again confirmed that their global cluster, which is ready for tough confrontation with the rest of the world, is roughly speaking Europe, the United States, Canada, Japan, maybe South Korea, Australia, certainly New Zealand, and a few other countries there. The rest of the world is not ready in this case to isolate Russia, and in the long term not ready to isolate China. This is because the main battle will not be between the United States and Russia. The main battle will be between the United States and China, and what is happening now in Ukraine and perhaps will happen in other post-Soviet republics is only a prelude to the main battle, which I emphasize has not yet begun. But at the end of this battle, the world will certainly be divided into several clusters that will live autonomously, not just in their own mentally autonomous space, but also in a relatively economically self-contained economic space. That is, several conditional socio-economic autarkies will be created on the planet, which will of course be interconnected, but not as much as they were before February 24th, 2022. And the fact that today, for example, European countries threaten the Russian Federation with some kind of international courts, with some kind of international consequences, because they don't want to honor certain contracts. In fact, these people who say all of that, they say it either because they're stupid or because they're sneaky and do not want to admit a simple fact. No international court will have any effect on anyone. International courts are in that old world which is fading away. In the new world, all these structures no longer work, and you have to be a very naive person to hope that some court in Stockholm will rule anything against the Russian Federation. Yes, of course it will, and will be told to go to hell. And these are the realities of the new world that is already forming, and it is already clearly visible after 2 months of a special military operation on the territory of Ukraine. It is clear that Ukraine here is just an excuse. In fact, as I said at the beginning, it is about reshaping the entire world system, which will definitely, without a doubt, hit everyone. It will hit those who have not prepared for it harder. Those who have prepared will experience a weaker hit. And as a result, in about a year or two, we can, by the way, make a final choice who was ready for this fight and who was not. Well, in any case, I wish all the inhabitants of our planet to calmly, normally survive all this and enter this new world, which I am absolutely certain upon our victory will be a much better world than the one that fell into oblivion on February 24th, 2022. Yes, of course, some of its remnants will still be visible for many years to come. Nevertheless, this is the cornerstone date that will definitely be recorded in history and studied by our children and grandchildren, and I hope great-grandchildren. That's what I wanted to say in this piece. That's all for now. The next piece will be an evening war bulletin. Goodbye. Bye.